Hi, thanks a lot for doing this interview. So I'll just go right with the first question. Well,
Please.
Shang-Chi is not only like the first solo movie of the character, but also his debut in Marvel Cinematic Universe. So I think it like puts a lot of pressure on the crew. And how did you manage it? Maybe like it also put some pressure on you.
I mean, I definitely could see how it would. I definitely put a lot of pressure on myself going leading up to the start of the movie for so many reasons. All of the ones that you mentioned. It's his debut movie. It's the first time you're seeing him in the MCU. It's also, the first Asian-led superhero film in the MCU. So, I definitely felt the kind of the gravity of that going in, but what I think Destin, our director, did an amazing job of is keeping us focused on the job, which is making the best movie that we possibly can make. And all of the other things are things that we can't necessarily control. And I think what he told me is that it's so important to come to work every day feeling joyful and feeling loose and feeling willing to play and experiment and be creative, because sometimes when you put too much pressure on yourself, you become very laser focused and it can be very hard to deviate from one path or one idea. And for art, for filmmaking, it's always important to try new things, to not be afraid to fail, and all of those things. So it was important for us to maintain that kind of sense of joy on set every day.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So what was your first reaction when you found out you're gonna play Shang-Chi?
Oh, I cried. I cried
Really?
hysterically. I mean, I had never experienced anything like that in my life before, and I was, a very I had been working on a small show in Canada up until that point, but I had never gotten anything that big, and it was by far the biggest thing to ever happen in my career. It was just such a big moment, and I knew that my life would never be the same after that. So I cried, I screamed into my pillow, and everything. I mean, it was a dream come true.
This is great. What's like what was like the most fun part of making this movie for you?
And the most fun part, honestly, was probably hanging out with the cast. We all got along so well, and I came out of this movie with some of the best friends that I have today. So I think just hanging out with them, and we spent countless nights hanging out in my apartment in Sydney, playing board games, playing video games, talking about scenes, just all of it. I mean, it was so fun that it honestly didn't even feel like work a lot of days, and that's the best. I felt like I was coming to work every day with friends. We were hanging out, and then we were coming home and hanging out some more. That was truly, truly the best time.
It's cool. I actually like just came back from the interview with Aquafina and she said absolutely the same thing
Oh
that
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So the movie is packed with action and fight scenes. So was it hard to train for them and were like some specific inspiration for these fight scenes?
Well, it was a very extensive training process. I wanted to give everything that I had, so I trained with the stunt team every single day leading up to the start of our shooting. So I got to Sydney maybe 4 months before we started. I trained 5 times a week, 5, 6 hours a day. Um, and we had a lot of action sequences in our movie, obviously, to go through. We drew from a variety of experiences, a variety of inspirations. Jackie Chan is a big part of it, partially too because our action director Brad Allen had come from the Jackie Chan stunt team, and one of our fight coordinators and choreographers, Andy Chang, also came from the stunt team. And they were so incredible. Their action, their eye for, action and martial arts is so unmatched. It's so good. And they paid a lot of homage to that kind of style of Hong Kong action filmmaking. But then we also had references to Ang Lee and Crouching Tiger and Zhang Yimou and Hero. I mean, there's lots of little homages and references that are peppered throughout the entire movie. And it is a love letter to martial arts in a lot of ways.
That's cool. So how do you see the future of Shang-Chi in MCU?
Well, I wish I knew what the future was. All I can say is that I'm a fan of obviously all of the characters and all of the Avengers and all of that. So of course, my hope is that he continues on and he has more stories to tell. I think there's a lot of space and room to grow with the character. I think where he leaves off in this movie, it really sets the stage nicely for the future. But that being said, I don't want to speculate to what exactly that might be. I'm very excited though, if and when they give me that call.
I think we're all excited.
Yeah, thank you.
So we actually mostly write about animation. So maybe you have like some favorite animated series or movies.
I mean, I think the Pixar stuff is definitely huge for me. Inside Out is probably one of my favorite movies of all time. It's such a poignant story about growing up, and it's set in such an interesting and innovative way, in the way that it portrays human emotion, and it's really incredible. It makes me cry every single time I watch it.
Aw. So were you like a comic book fan or like superhero movies fan before you started acting in Shang-Chi?
Huge, huge. I loved
Really?
I loved superheroes. I loved Power Rangers. I loved anything where, you had a group of misfit kids and they all kind of got together and they saved the world, or they got special abilities. I was an only child at home in Canada, and my parents worked all the time. So I would love to fantasize about one day getting special abilities and having to do great things, right? Because usually I was stuck at home doing my homework and
Yeah.
not really going out. So I loved everything about superheroes, from the comics to the shows to the movies. And yeah, in a lot of ways, all I ever wanted was to be able to play a superhero. So this is, trust me when I say it's an absolute dream come true.
That's cool. And are there any like specific superheroes or like just pop cultural figures that you like really admired in your teenage years or in childhood?
Uh-huh. Wow. That's a really good question. I mean, I mentioned Power Rangers. I think there's one Power Ranger in particular. Trini was the
Mhm.
original Yellow Ranger, and she
Yeah.
also happened to be Vietnamese American. So that was huge. It was like one of the earliest forms of Asian representation that I had. I remember, my favorite hero in the Marvel universe was probably either Iron Man or Spider-Man.
Okay.
Um, I really, the fact that they kind of wore masks meant that they could be anybody underneath those masks, and so I
Yeah.
kind of like to imagine um, that being me. And then I loved Harry Potter. I loved Star Wars. All of these stories about people with you know big destinies that they had to fulfill, and prophecies and all that stuff. I think for a kid with not a lot going for him, it meant the world.
Yeah, that's great. So do you think that there's something that makes Shang-Chi like stand out a little bit from other Marvel movies?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think first and foremost, it's our action sequences. I think
Yeah.
they're obviously they have to be of a certain caliber, because Shang-Chi is the one of the best hand-to-hand fighters in the world. That's how he's portrayed in the comic books. That's what we had to live up to, and we knew that the action had to be a step above what anybody had ever seen in the MCU. So we took that challenge very, very seriously. And then second, I think I think it's such an incredible story about heart and about family, and those are all very relatable things. And so, some superheroes have very fantastic stories about their origins and where they came from, but Sean is just a kid in San Francisco who's got a really complicated relationship with his dad, and I think in that way it makes him really, really relatable, and I think people will be able to see a lot of themselves in the character.
That's cool. Thanks a lot for this interview. Bye.
Thanks. Bye bye.